The Royal Watchman's Dilemma. Officer Marcus Thompson had been standing guard at Buckingham Palace for 12 years. He knew every stone, every corner, and every tourist pattern by heart. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard as hundreds of visitors gathered for the changing of the guard ceremony. Marcus stood perfectly still in his red tunic and black bearskin hat, but his eyes never stopped moving. Children pressed against the iron railings, parents held phones high above their heads, and tour guides spoke in dozens of languages. It was a typical Tuesday morning in London, yet something felt different. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that danger lurked somewhere in the cheerful crowd. The ceremony began as it had thousands of times before. The band played, tourists cheered, and cameras flashed. Marcus maintained his position near the main gate, scanning faces in the crowd. His training had taught him to notice things others missed. A person standing too close, someone wearing heavy clothing on a warm day, bags left unattended. Then he saw her, a little girl, maybe 7 years old, with curly brown hair and a bright yellow dress. She stood at the front of the crowd, pressed against the railings, completely mesmerized by the spectacle. Her parents were nowhere to be seen. Marcus noted her location, but continued his surveillance. The crowd grew larger as more tourists arrived. Street performers gathered nearby, adding to the chaos. A man juggling colorful balls drew applause. A woman painted silver like a statue posed for photos. Musicians played cheerful tunes. The atmosphere was festive and joyful, exactly what tourists expected from their London experience. Marcus noticed movement in his peripheral vision. A tall man in a dark coat was pushing through the crowd, moving with purpose rather than casual interest. His behavior seemed odd. While everyone else was looking toward the palace, this man kept glancing around nervously. His hands stayed deep in his pockets, and he avoided eye contact with other tourists. The little girl in the yellow dress had moved closer to the ceremony area. She was now standing directly in front of the main gate, her small hands gripping the iron bars. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she watched the guards march in perfect formation. She seemed completely unaware of anything happening around her. Marcus felt his instincts sharpening. Something was wrong, but he couldn't identify exactly what. The man in the dark coat had stopped moving and was now standing about 20 feet behind the little girl. He appeared to be watching her rather than the ceremony. His posture was tense, and he kept checking his watch. The crowd pressed closer as the ceremony reached its climax. People pushed forward, trying to get better views and photos. In the chaos, Marcus lost sight of the man in the dark coat. Panic shot through him as he scanned the sea of faces. Where had he gone? Then Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. The man was now just a few steps behind the little girl. His right hand was emerging from his pocket, and something metallic glinted in the sunlight. Marcus couldn't tell what it was, but every alarm bell in his head was screaming. Protocol demanded that Marcus maintain his position unless directly ordered otherwise. Royal guards were not supposed to break formation during ceremonies. They were living statues, symbols of British tradition and discipline. Moving without permission could result in serious consequences for his career. But Marcus had also sworn an oath to protect innocent people. He had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before joining the Royal Guard. He had seen enough violence to recognize the signs of impending danger. His gut told him that little girl was in immediate peril. The man's hand was now fully out of his pocket. Marcus caught a glimpse of metal, though he still couldn't identify what the man was holding. The crowd was so thick that other people blocked his view. He had maybe seconds to act. Without thinking, Marcus broke formation. He stepped away from his post and began pushing through the crowd toward the little girl. His heavy boots and formal uniform made movement difficult, but adrenaline drove him forward. Tourists looked at him in surprise. Some assumed he was part of the ceremony and began taking photos. The man in the dark coat was now directly behind the little girl. His hand was raised, whatever he was holding pointed downward. Marcus was still 15 feet away, blocked by a family taking selfies. He pushed past them, ignoring their protests. "Excuse me, move!" Marcus shouted, abandoning all pretense of royal protocol. His voice carried authority, and people instinctively stepped aside. He could see the little girl clearly now. She was still watching the ceremony, completely oblivious to the danger behind her. The man's hand was moving downward. Marcus lunged forward, reaching for the little girl. His large hands grabbed her shoulders just as something sharp flashed past where her head had been moments before. He pulled her backward against his chest, away from whatever threat had been aimed at her. The crowd erupted in confusion. People were shouting, pointing, and pushing in all directions. Some thought they had witnessed an attack. Others believed it was part of the show. Cameras flashed as tourists tried to capture what they thought was an unexpected performance. Marcus looked around frantically for the man in the dark coat, but he had vanished into the chaos. Whatever he had been holding was gone, too. The little girl in Marcus's arms was crying now, frightened by the sudden commotion and the strange guard who had grabbed her. "It's okay, sweetheart," Marcus said gently, his voice shaking slightly from adrenaline. "You're safe now. Where are your parents?" The little girl couldn't answer through her tears. She clung to Marcus's red tunic, her small fingers gripping the fabric. Around them, the crowd was becoming increasingly agitated. Some people were demanding explanations. Others were calling for security. Marcus's radio crackled to life. His commanding officer's voice was sharp and demanding. "Thompson, report your position immediately." Marcus knew he was in serious trouble. He had abandoned his post during a ceremony, potentially compromising security protocols. But as he looked down at the frightened little girl in his arms, he felt certain he had made the right choice. Something terrible had almost happened, even if he couldn't prove it. Palace security officers were now pushing through the crowd toward him. Their faces were grim, and Marcus could see the questions in their eyes. Why had he broken formation? What emergency had justified his actions? How could he explain a threat that had disappeared without a trace? The ceremony continued around them, though several guards were clearly distracted by the commotion. The band played on, but the joyful atmosphere had been shattered. Tourists were arguing among themselves about what they had witnessed. Some insisted they had seen a weapon. Others claimed it was just confusion. Marcus held the little girl protectively as security approached. He scanned the crowd one more time, hoping to spot the man in the dark coat. But whoever he was, he had melted away into the sea of tourists. The only evidence of danger was Marcus's gut instinct and a brief glimpse of something metallic. As the security officers reached him, Marcus prepared to explain his actions. He knew his career might be over, but he also knew he couldn't have lived with himself if something had happened to this innocent child. Sometimes. The investigation begins. Security Chief Inspector Sarah Williams arrived within minutes of the incident. Her sharp eyes took in the scene immediately. A royal guard holding a crying child while confused tourists milled about. This was exactly the kind of situation that could create an international incident, if not handled properly. "Thompson, bring the child to the security office immediately," she ordered curtly. "We need to sort this out before the media gets hold of it." Marcus carried the little girl through the crowd, which parted reluctantly. People were still taking photos and videos, many already posting to social media. He could hear fragments of excited conversations in multiple languages as tourists tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Inside the security office, Inspector Williams closed the door firmly. The room was small and windowless, filled with monitors showing camera feeds from around the palace grounds. Marcus gently set the little girl down in a chair, but she immediately reached for his hand, clearly frightened by the unfamiliar surroundings. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Inspector Williams asked, her voice much gentler than it had been outside. The little girl looked up with tear-stained cheeks, but didn't answer. Marcus knelt beside her chair. "I'm Marcus." This is Sarah. We're here to help you find your parents. Can you tell us your name? Emma, the little girl whispered. Emma Chen. I want my mummy. Inspector Williams was already on her radio, requesting that security search for Emma's parents. She turned to Marcus with a stern expression. Now, Thompson, I need a full explanation of why you abandoned your post during a ceremony. Marcus took a deep breath. He knew how his story would sound, but he had to tell the truth. There was a man in the crowd, ma'am. He was behaving suspiciously, and I believed he posed a threat to this child. What kind of threat? Did you see a weapon? I saw something metallic in his hand. He was positioned directly behind Emma, and his behavior was predatory. I felt immediate action was necessary. Inspector Williams frowned. Describe this man. Tall, maybe 6 feet, dark coat despite the warm weather, brown hair, clean-shaven. He kept checking his watch and avoiding eye contact with other tourists. He moved through the crowd with purpose, not like someone sightseeing. Did anyone else see this supposed threat? Marcus hesitated. The crowd was very dense, ma'am. I don't think anyone else had the same vantage point I did. Inspector Williams made notes on her tablet. We'll review the security footage, but Thompson, you understand the severity of breaking formation during a ceremony? The protocols exist for good reasons. Before Marcus could respond, there was a commotion outside the office. Voices were raised in what sounded like panic and desperation. Inspector Williams opened the door to find a Chinese couple speaking rapidly to one of the security officers. Emma! Where is Emma? The woman was saying, her English heavily accented but understandable. We cannot find our daughter! Emma jumped up from her chair and ran toward the voices. Mummy! Daddy! The reunion was emotional and chaotic. Emma's parents, David and Li Chen, hugged their daughter tightly while peppering the security officers with questions. Through tears and broken English, they explained how they had become separated from Emma in the crowd. So many people, Li Chen said, still holding Emma close. We turn around, and she is gone. We look everywhere. Inspector Williams took detailed statements from the Chens about when and where they had last seen their daughter. The timeline matched Marcus's observations. Emma had been alone in the crowd for at least 15 minutes before the incident. As the Chens prepared to leave with Emma, the little girl broke away from her parents and ran back to Marcus. She hugged his leg tightly and looked up at him with grateful eyes. Thank you for keeping me safe, she said solemnly. The scary man was behind me, wasn't he? Marcus's heart stopped. What scary man, Emma? The one with the sharp thing. I saw him in the window reflection. He was going to hurt me, but you saved me. Inspector Williams exchanged a meaningful glance with Marcus. This was the first corroboration of his story, even if it came from a 7-year-old child. Emma, can you tell us more about what you saw? Inspector Williams asked gently. Emma nodded gravely. I was watching the pretty guards, and I saw the scary man in the window behind me. He had something silver and pointy. He was reaching toward my head when the nice guard grabbed me. David Chen's face went pale. Someone tried to hurt our daughter? We're investigating the incident thoroughly, Inspector Williams assured them. For now, we recommend you stay close to Emma and be extra vigilant during the rest of your visit to London. After the Chen family left, Inspector Williams turned to Marcus with a new expression. The skepticism was gone, replaced by professional concern. It seems there might be more to your story than I initially thought, she admitted. Let's review the security footage immediately. They spent the next 2 hours going through camera feeds from multiple angles. The footage showed Emma standing alone at the railings, exactly as Marcus had described. It showed him breaking formation and pushing through the crowd. But the cameras had been focused on the ceremony itself, and the dense crowd made it difficult to identify individual faces in the background. There, Marcus pointed to a dark figure on one of the screens. That's him. Inspector Williams enhanced the image, but the resolution was poor and the man's face was partially obscured. I can see someone in dark clothing, but I can't make out clear features or confirm what he might have been holding. They continued reviewing footage, following the figure's movement through different camera angles. The man appeared to be deliberately avoiding the main cameras, staying in blind spots when possible. This behavior itself was suspicious, but it wasn't proof of criminal intent. "He knows our camera positions," Inspector Williams observed. "That's either very lucky or very planned." The man disappeared from the footage just moments after Marcus reached Emma. One camera showed him moving away from the crowd, but then he simply vanished, as if he had melted into the busy London streets. Inspector Williams sat back in her chair, processing what they had discovered. "The footage is consistent with your account, Thompson, but it's not conclusive. We have a suspicious figure, but no clear evidence of a weapon or direct threat." Marcus felt frustrated, but not surprised. He had acted on instinct and training, not waiting for definitive proof. "Ma'am, I know what I saw. That man was planning to harm Emma." "I believe you saw something that concerned you," Inspector Williams replied carefully. "The question is whether it was an actual threat or a misinterpretation of innocent behavior." She pulled up files on her computer. "I'm running the enhanced images through facial recognition software, but given the poor quality, I'm not optimistic about getting a match." As they worked, reports came in from other security personnel who had been questioning tourists who were present during the incident. Most people had been focused on the ceremony and hadn't noticed anything unusual. A few mentioned seeing a man in dark clothing, but their descriptions were vague and contradictory. One witness, an elderly woman from Germany, provided information that caught their attention. "I remember thinking the man looked out of place," she told the interviewing officer. "Everyone else was happy and excited, but he seemed angry or determined. It made me uncomfortable." Another witness, a teenage boy from France, mentioned seeing something shiny in the crowd but couldn't provide more details. His parents had been taking photos and might have inadvertently captured something useful. Inspector Williams contacted the French family and requested copies of all photos and videos taken during the ceremony. While they waited for the files, she and Marcus continued analyzing the security footage frame by frame. "Look at this." Marcus pointed to a sequence showing the crowd's reaction. "When I grabbed Emma, several people in the immediate area looked shocked, but look at their faces. Some of them are looking behind where Emma was standing, not at me. It's like they saw something too." Inspector Williams nodded thoughtfully. "We need to identify and interview those specific individuals." As the investigation deepened, Marcus began to realize that his split-second decision had triggered something much larger than a simple security breach. If there really had been a threat to Emma, it suggested planning and surveillance that went beyond opportunistic crime. The question that haunted him was simple but terrifying. If someone had been prepared to harm a child in broad daylight surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, what had they been trying to accomplish? And more importantly, were they still out there planning their next move? Doing the right thing meant accepting the consequences, regardless of how unfair they might seem. The little girl's sobs were quieting, but she still clung to him tightly. Marcus wondered where her parents were and how a child so young had ended up alone in such a crowded, chaotic environment. He also wondered about the man who had disappeared. Who was he? What had he been planning? And would anyone believe Marcus's story about a threat that couldn't be proven? The truth revealed. 3 days after the incident, Inspector Williams received a call that changed everything. The French tourist family had sent their photos and videos, and the technical analysis team had made a breakthrough discovery. "You need to see this immediately," Technical Sergeant James Morrison said, as he pulled up enhanced footage on his computer screen. "We've isolated several frames that show exactly what Thompson saw." The enhanced images revealed details that had been invisible in the original security footage. In one frame, a man's hand was clearly visible holding what appeared to be a modified syringe with an unusually long needle. The weapon had been concealed until the moment of attack, explaining why the security cameras hadn't captured it clearly. "My God," Inspector Williams whispered. He was going to inject her with something. Sergeant Morrison nodded grimly. The angle and positioning suggest he was aiming for the base of her neck. Whatever was in that syringe, it would have been delivered directly into her bloodstream. Marcus felt sick as he stared at the evidence. His instincts had been right, but the reality was worse than he had imagined. Someone had planned to poison a 7-year-old child in front of hundreds of witnesses. "We've sent the enhanced images to Interpol and all major intelligence agencies," Inspector Williams explained. "This level of sophistication suggests professional training." Within hours, they had their answer. The facial recognition software matched the man to a known international criminal named Viktor Petrov. He was wanted in connection with several high-profile kidnapping and assassination attempts across Europe. "But why target Emma Chen?" Marcus asked. "She's just a little girl on vacation with her parents." Inspector Williams had been investigating that exact question. "David Chen isn't just a tourist. He's a biochemical engineer working on classified research for a pharmaceutical company in Hong Kong. His work involves developing antidotes for biological weapons." The pieces began falling into place. Emma hadn't been a random victim. She had been specifically targeted to force her father to hand over his research. The plan had been to inject her with a slow-acting poison, then contact the parents with demands for the antidote formula in exchange for saving their daughter's life. "It's diabolical," Sergeant Morrison said. "They would have had complete leverage over Dr. Chen. He would have given them anything to save his daughter." Marcus realized how close they had come to an international incident. If the plan had succeeded, it could have compromised critical defense research and potentially put thousands of lives at risk. "How did they know the Chen family would be at the palace that day?" Marcus asked. The investigation revealed that the family's vacation itinerary had been tracked through their social media posts and hotel reservations. Viktor Petrov's organization had been planning this operation for weeks, studying the palace security procedures and identifying the perfect moment to strike. "They chose the changing of the guard ceremony because it provides maximum crowd cover and distraction," Inspector Williams explained. "They probably assumed our guards would be too disciplined to break formation, even if they noticed something suspicious." Marcus shuddered to think what would have happened if he had followed protocol instead of trusting his instincts. Emma would have been poisoned, and her father would have been forced to choose between his daughter's life and his professional obligations. The international manhunt for Viktor Petrov intensified, but he had vanished without a trace. Airport records showed he had left London within hours of the failed attack, using a false passport that was discovered only after the fact. Dr. Chen was quietly relocated to a secure facility where he could continue his research under protection. The family was grateful beyond words for Marcus's intervention, though they remained unaware of how close Emma had come to death. "The interesting thing is that Petrov almost certainly had backup plans," Inspector Williams noted. "When the injection attempt failed, his organization could have tried other approaches. Kidnapping from the hotel, attacking during transit, or waiting for another opportunity." Marcus's quick action hadn't just saved Emma from immediate harm. It had likely disrupted an entire criminal operation that might have taken months to reorganize. The media never learned the true details of what had happened. The official report described a minor security incident involving a lost child who was reunited with her parents. Marcus's actions were noted internally, but kept classified for security reasons. Marcus returned to his regular duties, but the experience had changed him. He found himself paying even closer attention to crowd dynamics and suspicious behavior. Other guards noticed his heightened alertness and began following his example. "You've made us all better at our jobs," his colleague James told him. "We're seeing things we might have missed before." Inspector Williams recommended Marcus for commendation, though the details would remain classified. More importantly, She implemented new training protocols based on the incident. "We've learned that sometimes protecting people requires breaking rules," she told the assembled guards during a training session. "Your first duty is to human safety, not ceremony." The enhanced security procedures included better coordination between guards and improved surveillance of crowd behaviors. The Chen incident had exposed vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed. 6 months later, Marcus received an unexpected letter. It was from Emma Chen, written in careful 7-year-old handwriting with help from her mother. "Dear Guard Marcus," it read, "thank you for saving me from the scary man. I am learning to be brave like you. I want to help keep people safe when I grow up. My daddy says you are a hero." Enclosed with the letter was a drawing Emma had made showing Marcus in his red uniform, standing protectively in front of a little girl in a yellow dress. Behind them, a dark figure was walking away, defeated. Marcus smiled as he looked at the drawing. Emma had understood more about that day than any of the adults had realized. Her innocent perspective had captured the essential truth of what had happened. Good had triumphed over evil because someone had chosen to act when action was needed. The investigation officially closed a year later when Viktor Petrov was finally captured in Eastern Europe during an unrelated operation. He was extradited to face charges for multiple international crimes, including the attempted attack on Emma Chen. During his interrogation, Petrov revealed the full scope of his organization's plan. They had intended to use Dr. Chen's research to develop biological weapons for sale to terrorist groups. The attack on Emma was just the beginning of what could have been a catastrophic chain of events. "Your guard's intervention didn't just save one child," the interrogating officer told Inspector Williams. "It potentially saved thousands of lives." Marcus never met Emma again, but he kept her drawing on his desk at home. It reminded him that sometimes the most important moments in life happen in split seconds, when training, instinct, and courage combine to make the difference between tragedy and triumph. He continued serving as a Royal Guard for many more years, but he never forgot the lesson of that day. Protection isn't about following rules blindly. It's about recognizing when human compassion must override protocol. Sometimes the greatest act of service is knowing when to break formation and do what's right, regardless of the consequences. The tourists who witnessed the incident returned to their home countries with stories of London's pageantry and tradition. None of them knew they had also witnessed something much more significant, a moment when one person's courage and quick thinking had prevented an international crisis and saved an innocent life. Emma Chen grew up safely, eventually becoming a doctor herself. She never forgot the guard who had protected her, and she dedicated her career to helping others, inspired by the example of someone who had put duty to humanity above duty to rules. The palace grounds returned to their normal rhythm of ceremonies and tourism, but the guards who worked there carried new awareness of their responsibilities. They had learned that being a protector sometimes means trusting your instincts, even when you can't prove the danger is real. Marcus's story became part of the unofficial training lore, passed down to new guards as an example of how split-second decisions can change lives. The official records would never tell the full truth, but those who served knew that real heroism often happens in moments when no one is watching and no one will ever know the disaster that was prevented. In the end, the most important truth was the simplest one. A little girl went home safely to her parents because someone was willing to risk his career to do what he believed was right. Sometimes that's all that matters.